I'm Kathy Ellis, blessed to serve as co-minister of this community. In this morning's worship, we are focusing on the Unitarian Universalist Association General Assembly. That's its annual business meeting. And most of the UCH participants who went to GA will be part of the service with me. And I think we may have some late-comers more than normal because of our traffic issues today. We invite you to join us for coffee hour following this morning's service, either downstairs or on Zoom. You know, when we come to worship, we come as we are. We don't come because we're all alike, and we definitely don't come because we all agree. We don't come because we're already perfect and make no mistakes. We bring our hopes and our fears, our sorrows, our failures, our regrets, as well as our joys and our successes. There is no one who is not welcome in worship. Online or in person, we're glad you're here. Here, where we bring our whole selves to worship, body, mind, heart, and spirit, not just the mind, body, mind, heart, and spirit, to worship, and we come to be shaped, to find meaning, to find community, to grow with one another. As one community, we sing and meditate, laugh and cry, grieve and hope, listen and pray. So, this morning, may our minds and hearts be opened by these gifts we give to each other in worship. Let us worship together, and let us rise in body or spirit as Dan leads us in our opening hymn, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. The words on the screen. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song.
Open your ears, everyone.
Today will be a joyful day.
Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Yeah, that's right.
Don't be afraid of some change. One of the themes at General Assembly was change is coming, and actually I think change is here, and change is still coming. Change probably will always be coming. And to me, the changes that I saw in the Unitarian Universalist Association were good ones. The purpose, they said, of the Unitarian Universalist Association is to actively engage its members in the transformation of the world through liberating love. One thing that they state explicitly has already been affirmed many times in this community, that is, love is the center. As Mary lights the chalice, let us repeat the UCH covenant. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is our gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth of love, and to help one another. There it is.
Good morning. We have a story for you today titled I Am Love. It's a book about compassion by Susan Verdi, and the illustrator is the great Peter Reynolds. I really love his work. Anyways, this book asks its readers to look inward when they feel afraid, angry, hurt, or sad. When a storm is brewing inside us and the skies grow dark, the transformative power of love lets the light back in. Let's begin our story. When I see someone going through a storm of hurt, unfairness, of anger and sadness, when the sun disappears and the skies grow dark, and I see there is fear, I ask myself, what can I do to let the light back in? I put my hands on my heart and listen. And that is where I find the answer. I have compassion. I act with tenderness. I am love. I can listen and not say a word, and I can be there. Love is being present. I can hug and hold and say, everything's going to be all right. Love is comfort. I can speak softly and choose my words and actions carefully. Love is gentle. I can give thanks for all I have and am able to share. Love is gratitude. I can keep my mind and body safe and healthy because love is taking care of me. I can express what's important to me. Love is creative. I know that no one is perfect. Love is understanding. I can do my best to make things better when something is wrong. Love is effort. I can celebrate those I've loved before. Love is remembering. I can find goodness in a kind word, a helping hand, or a shared smile. Love is tiny gestures. I can breathe in the air that the whole world shares and know all creatures are made from the very same stardust, because love is connection. When the clouds roll in for others and for me, I know now there is something that I can do. I can let my heart lead the way. Because I am love, you are love, and we are love. And I'm going to ask you to repeat this with me. I am love, you are love, we are love. And with love, we will weather the storm and light up the sky together. And now we will sing our children out to their class.
Now we bless you on your way. May you feel love every day. May your light shining bright transform the world. Now we bless you on your way. May you feel love every day. May your light shining bright transform the world with love.
Good morning. My name is Mary Henninger Voss. I am from the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg. We occupy land once occupied by the people we call the Susquehannock. I am a 60-something white cisgendered woman. I have dark asymmetric bobbed hair with a dramatic streak of gray. And today I am wearing a blue shirt. My pronouns are she, her. So how does that strike you for an introduction? At the UUA General Assembly in June, each delegate was required to list all that data before speaking their allotted 90 seconds during the deliberation sessions. So if you're recently joining us, the UUA is the Unitarian Universalist Association. It's the umbrella organization for all congregations, and General Assembly is a convocation of delegates from across the country, from all different congregations, to do a lot of UU enrichment and to serve as an electorate of sorts for the leadership and to discuss some important issues that are coming up. So I was honored to be a delegate from UCH. What I want to talk to you about this morning is this: identity and democracy. I have about 5 minutes, which is 3 times longer than what I would have had at GA. But what I really want to tell you is that there are some hella important issues being discussed at GA this year about Unitarian identity. At least insofar as the words we use not only to describe ourselves, but also to direct ourselves are important. And insofar as democratic process is important, we, this congregation, you all sitting in those chairs or joining us online, we need to catch up to it. So aside from electing a new president, and a very impressive one, as was the outgoing president, I suggest you look at the videos on the UUA website of their speeches, we delegates were deciding on matters essential to the articulation and performance of UU identity. The platform was not ideal. We had approximately 3+ hours for something like 1,000+ delegates to weigh in on 2 very big deals. Now, this is going to sound boring at first, but pay attention. As David Foster Wallace wrote, the revolution is going to come in the form of boring documents. So the rewriting of, the first up was the rewriting of Article 2 of the UUA bylaws, known to us, or most of us anyway, simply as the 7 principles and 6 sources of Unitarian Universalism. That is, eliminating the principles and sources. So I told you, hella important. And 2, a business resolution that I'll get into later. The Article 2 Study Commission has already been working for 2 years. It's primarily composed of ministers. They say they have spoken to 10,000 Unitarians. We were supposed to be talking about it in our own congregation for the past year, but as you know, UCH has been otherwise occupied for that time. So at this point, the Commission recommends the complete elimination of the 7 principles and 6 sources, and in its place, they propose a graphic centered on the word love, and you have it on the cover of your order of service, radiating out into 6 values that include interdependence, equity, transformation, pluralism, generosity, and justice. Explanatory paragraphs maintain some of the language of the principles, but basically we would now have 7 values and no sources. So lucky you, we have included the text of Article 2 in your order of service, and we will even be reading it to you. So you will all be coming up to speed on Article 2. So this is going to replace, or the proposal is that this replace the 7 principles and 6 sources. So you may have worked a decade to memorize the 7 principles. You might be all hyped up and ready to craft the 8th principle, and you might have an idiosyncratic attachment to one of the lesser touted principles. Mine is democracy in our congregations, but let's just table all of that for right now. So there I was in Pittsburgh this June one delegate among over 1,000, being asked to vote on finalizing the form of a proposed Article 2, or at least finalizing it for the purposes of discussion. We were not voting on adoption. That will be left to next year's delegates. So even taking advantage of the advanced online sources and forums, I was there cramming to understand how the old and new Article 2 texts define us and what the import of the 85 proposed amendments were, about a dozen of which were prioritized or fast-tracked. We were actually going to vote on those prioritized amendments. When we did, each amendment was given about 10 or 15 minutes discussion. Honestly, it looked a little like theater. In any case, none of the amendments that were opposed by the commission who drafted the new Article 2 passed. And then there was the business resolution. The resolution called for the UUA to sell off, misleadingly labeled divestment, sell off some $13 million from any fossil fuel profiting companies and use the sale monies to pay reparations to descendants of enslaved and indigenous communities. 7 people were to be appointed to decide on those payments. When I saw this resolution, I thought it just heartbreakingly harebrained. But when I was confronted by the advocates and framers of the resolution, a large band of young people. This resolution received a 68% no vote. And I'm at the end of my 5 minutes, so I won't go into details right now. But here's the bottom line for me. The proposal was brought by these refreshingly rowdy and united young people who would come down the hall singing, "We are building a new way," as if it were a protest song. For them, it was a question of real identity. What we do versus what we say. How could Unitarians dare voice these values of climate justice and social justice while profiting from fossil fuel-related companies? The passion of these young people was so palpable, and all the talk about investment portfolios, endowments, fiduciary responsibility made them even more disaffected. They were turning this, it seemed to me, into a fight between young truth-sayers and the comfortable business-as-usual generation who is on their way out. And yet it was so clear to me that we were all allies, that they were seeking to cut the knees of the organization that had worked so hard to open their eyes and encourage their dreams of a new kind of society. It seemed clear that the real work of reparations, of walking the talk, really has to be done by each of the congregations, which the UUA is there to support. What these young organizers needed to believe, I thought, was in us together. So here's my summation of GA. It is a long worship service without a single coffee hour. Here is my perspective on the UUA. This is an organization of incredibly thoughtful, well-meaning people, and it is an organization that has provided this congregation in particular with so much support. But none of us quite knows how democracy can really work in large, disparate communities, aside from voting. And no one really knows how collective identities and individual identities inform each other. But one thing I know is true, and that is a democratic process, especially on these important issues, puts the burdens on members to do their own part, to educate themselves and to organize. So please look up some of those UUA videos from GA. Read Article 2, which is actually provided to those of you who are here. It is also online in a PDF version. Sign up for covenant groups and/or join other conversations that will be happening around here and around the articulation of the uniting tenets or values of this covenantal faith. So my name is Mary Henninger Voss. I am from the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg, and I believe in building a new way, and I believe in us.
The first worship service at GA, Emma's Resolution, a singing duo, female singing duo that perhaps many of you know, sang. They sang one of their most famous songs, Singing to the Other Side, and they repeated that again at a concert on the last night of GA. Pat Humphreys wrote it. We're going to attempt to sing it for you today. We'll sing the chorus and then the first verse. After that, you should see words for the chorus up on the screen. Please join in with us on the chorus. There'll be 3 verses.
We are living beneath the great Big Dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side.
I am alone and I am searching, hungering for answers in my time. I am balanced at the brink of wisdom. I'm impatient to receive a sign. I move forward with my senses open. Imperfection, it be my crime. In humility I will listen. We're all swimming to the other side.
We are living beneath the great Big Dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side.
On this journey through thoughts and feelings, binding intuition, my head, my heart, I am gathering the tools together. I'm preparing to do my part. All of those who have gone before me, band together and be my guide. Loving lessons that I will follow. We're all swimming to the other side.
We are living in the great Big Dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side.
When we get there, we'll discover all of the gifts we've been given to share have been with us since life's beginning, and we never noticed they were there. We can balance at the brink of wisdom, never recognizing that we've arrived.
Loving spirits will live together. We're all swimming to the other side. We are living the great Big Dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side.
That was beautiful, and every bit as good as Emma's Revolution. Thank you. I'm Karen Baker, and I was also honored to be one of this year's delegates from UCH to the General Assembly in Pittsburgh in June. I had never been to a General Assembly before, and I'd certainly never been a delegate, so I was not sure what to expect. It turned out to be a very meaningful experience for me, and was filled with some surprises. First of all, I didn't realize that the work of a delegate starts several weeks before the event. There were a series of things to vote on prior to traveling to GA. Some of them were fairly straightforward, but a couple were quite complex, as Mary has explained, and they required a lot of reading, research, attending meetings, and then voting electronically. Well, when I first heard that we would be discussing Article 2 of the bylaws and having an initial vote, I thought that that was probably an administrative detail or a revision in a process. So, imagine my surprise when I quickly discovered that Article 2 of the UUA bylaws defines the principles and purposes of the UUA and contains the 7 principles and sources of knowledge and inspiration that we rely upon. Well, this certainly got my attention, and I felt a fairly weighty responsibility. So I carefully read all the materials and resources that were available, and there were a lot. I started out being a bit skeptical, but when I saw all of the work that had gone into this, all of the people who had contributed to it, I became less alarmed and much more curious. I was fascinated to learn that Article 2 Study Group had been working on revising and updating this section of the bylaws for over 2 years, and as Mary said, they had received input from over 10,000 Unitarian Universalists. I also hadn't realized that these bylaws are supposed to be updated every 15 years, which makes sense since ours is a living faith, and we are continually learning and growing both as individuals and as a larger faith community. But in fact, the current version of the principles and purposes had not been revised since 1987, which is 36 years ago. And the world has changed a great deal since that time. I was reassured to learn that Paula Cole-Jones, the woman who had originally recommended that we add an 8th principle to directly address racial justice, was part of this study commission. And that now, instead of adding a new principle specifically focusing on racial justice, it has been woven into all of the values, which resonates with me. I'm very fond of the 7 principles. They're part of what made me feel at home when I first came here. And I also really like the newly proposed values with love at the center. There's a lot of overlap between the principles and the values, and I don't feel like I have to give one up in order to embrace the other. After reading about the process and listening to the discussions, I appreciate the direction that they seem to be moving, which includes more of a focus on community, more verbs and action-oriented language, more inclusivity. These are all things that I value. While at General Assembly, I was struck by how hard they worked to ensure accessibility and inclusivity for a wide variety of issues. Some of the attempts felt a bit awkward or tedious to me, and yet I so appreciate the spirit and intent behind it all. It did feel like love was at the center. Ultimately, we had an opportunity to vote on either ending the discussion about accepting the recommendations by the Article 2 study group or continuing the exploration and discussion for another year. We voted to continue. Next year, the General Assembly will be all virtual, and it will include a vote on whether or not to adopt the new values as part of the bylaws. So between now and then, I'm looking forward to talking with all of you about this and what it means for us as a congregation. My first experience at participating in General Assembly was made all the richer because there were so many of us from UCH in attendance. I think there were about 17, and we pretty much hung together as a pack, which I thought was great fun. As issues arose, we of course consulted with one another, but we also kept wondering what the rest of the congregation would think and how to best represent all of you. So I would like for next year's delegates to go into General Assembly with a clear sense of how UCH feels about the reworded values, what questions and concerns and hopes we have. So I look forward to a year of exploration and discovery and communication and in community with all of you. Thank you.
The most visible sign of the changes in the Unitarian Universalist Association may be the election of our new president, Sophia Betancourt. Reverend Dr. Sophia is a thoughtful and loving woman with theological depth. She is committed to communal care and the work for justice. She is the first openly queer and first woman of color to be elected UUA president. She's just remarkable. But changing and renewing Article 2 of the UUA bylaws is the next most visible sign of our changes for the 21st century. This section of the bylaws is really about the covenant between congregations, between and among congregations, but it's become important to individuals as well. And as you know, the principles and sources are in the front of the hymnals. Actually, I thought that the last change was in 1995, but you may be correct that it was 1987. But the changes now call us to openly, actively express our values and our heart while maintaining the work of our minds. So I'm inviting the GA participants to come up forward. We're going to read it to you because I want you to really absorb it. But if you wish, you can read along with the insert in your order of service. So come on up. Section 2.1, Purposes. The Unitarian Universalist Association will devote its resources and use its organizational powers for religious, educational, and humanitarian purposes. Its primary purposes are to assist congregations in their vital ministries, support and train leaders, both lay and professional, to foster lifelong faith formation and spiritual development, to heal historic injustices, to support and encourage the creation of new Unitarian Universalist communities, and to advance our Unitarian Universalist values in the world. The purpose of the Unitarian Universalist Association is to actively engage its members in the transformation of the world through liberating love. Section C, 2.2, Values and Covenant. As Unitarian Universalists, we covenant congregation to congregation and through our association to support and assist one another in our ministries. We draw from our heritage of freedom, reason, hope, and courage, building on the foundation of love. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. Inseparable from one another, these shared values are I don't know if it's on. It's not on. There we go.
Interdependence. We honor the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. With humility and reverence, we covenant to protect the earth and all beings from exploitation, creating and nurturing sustainable relationships of repair, mutuality, and justice.
Experience and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect.
Justice. We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions within our congregation and the society at large.
Transformation. We adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, never complete and never perfect.
Generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality.
Equity. We declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities.
Section C, 2.3, Inspirations. As Unitarian Universalists, we proclaim that direct experiences of transcending mystery and wonder are a primary source of inspiration. These experiences open our hearts, renew our spirits, and transform our lives. We draw upon and are inspired by sacred, secular, and scientific understandings that help us make meaning and live into our values. We respect the histories, contexts, and cultures in which these understandings were created and are currently practiced. These sources ground us and sustain us in ordinary, difficult, and joyous times. Grateful for the experiences that move us, aware of the religious ancestries we inherit, and enlivened by the diversity which enriches our faith, we are called to ever deepen and expand our wisdom.
Inclusion. Systems of power, privilege, and oppression have traditionally created barriers for persons and groups with particular identities, ages, abilities, and histories. We pledge to replace such barriers with ever-widening circles of solidarity and mutual respect. We strive to be an association of congregations that truly welcome all persons who share our values. We commit to being an association of congregations that empowers and enhances everyone's participation, especially those with historically marginalized identities.
Section C, 2.5, Freedom of Belief. Congregational freedom and the individual's right of conscience are central to our Unitarian Universalist heritage. Congregations may establish statements of purpose, covenants, and bonds of union so long as they do not require that members adhere to a particular creed.
Thank you. Will you rise in body or spirit and join in singing "Come and Go With Me to That Land," verses 1 and 2.
Come go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. Come go freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound.
Some more later. First, I'm going to talk a little bit. So you've heard two different perspectives about General Assembly, and there are many more perspectives, and I encourage you to talk with the folks who went there. I saw change, really, really positive change, and a generational shift. Changes away from intense individualism and toward covenanted communities of care and mutuality. Movement towards being more heart and spirit centered. We do have shared, deeply held values. And actually a movement towards more democracy and a movement towards paying more attention to the voices of those at the margins and people who have experienced oppression. I decided to go to this GA this year for several reasons. It was close. I had a job and I could afford to go. I couldn't go when I was retired. I didn't have enough money. And I wanted to support the many people from GA, from UCH who were going to GA this year. But ahead of time, I grumbled to my husband, who was actually a delegate from the Boiling Springs congregation. And he's been to GA before, so I think he knew what I was talking about. I grumbled that I might come back just annoyed and frustrated by Unitarian Universalists. It's happened before. But I was not. I was inspired. I mean, yes, every speaker having to introduce themselves with a long list is tedious. But it was purposeful. The list of how people looked was for people who were vision impaired. They wanted to honor the fact that, yes, we all live on land that belonged to other people before our ancestors came and conquered. They were purposeful. There was a separate section for people who had scent problems. They really tried to care for everyone well. But the reason for my fear that I might be just overly annoyed, and I see some heads nodding from people who've been to GAs in the past, is how the business meetings used to be. There used to be many, many, many entitled individuals who seemed to speak for the sake of hearing themselves and also probably for telling us how smart they were and how they were smarter than other people, and therefore we should listen to what they have to say and do what they want just because it was them. There was a lot of arguing during the process about the process. It's like, really? You remember that? Some of you? Yeah? It was actually somewhat entertaining, but it was also exhausting and annoying. So Mary, it may have seemed theatrical now, but it was so much better than it used to be from my perspective. Partly that was because so much of the discussion was in those things ahead of time and online. Well, we didn't participate in the stuff way ahead. There were months of possible, years actually, participation in the Article 2. Now, I have to say I disagree with Mary, which is fine, because we don't all have to agree, that we're not eliminating the principles. For one thing, they're in our hymnals, and we're going to have the hymnals for a long time. But for another, really, all the language is in the new purposes. Also, the words come first. The written piece is primary. The graphic is secondary to lift up and explain the words. When GA was only in person, it was way too expensive for many people. Only relatively affluent people could be delegates, and in practice, mainly older cisgendered heterosexual white people had much of the power. Participation now is much more diverse. Now delegates can attend and vote online. You still need to have computer access and broadband access, so there's still some barrier there, but it's much less of a barrier and much more affordable. Now, the changes that we can see now began in reaction and response to white supremacy culture, racism, and gender and other oppression within the Unitarian Universalist world. And when I was at GA, I picked up a book. I really like this book, but I suspect that many of you would not really want to read it. It's Widening the Circle of Concern, the report of the UUA Commission on Institutional Change. Have you read it, Kate? Yeah, it is very good. The commission was chartered in 2017 to conduct an audit of the power structures and analyze systemic racism and white supremacy culture within the Unitarian Universalist Association. The report, which was published in 2020, also, it names the problems, but it also highlights changes that have already been made and makes recommendations for future changes. The changes are calling us to be more accountable, more living our love, more living these values, and a little bit less stuck in our heads and arguing about stuff. I also disagree with Mary about the sources, because they are also in there. They're just not named in the same way, but they are the inspirations. And the primary source for Unitarian Universalism has always actually been our personal experience of the sacred, then communicated in community and learned from each other. So, I want to encourage you to learn from each other. I want to encourage you to join a small group here at UCH. Reverend Sandra and I will be leading a group or more, if there's more call for it, engaging with Article 2. Covenant groups this year, and Corey's getting ready to have you sign up for covenant groups, will be a place to deepen your understanding of these values as well as strengthening your relationships within UCH. They aren't just values. If you notice when we read them, they are also calls to action. So, what actions might you take? What actions might we take? change is here. Change is coming. Although one guy did say that they come at the pace of turtles. But still, we do change. The new Article 2, and even should it not be supported, which I hope it will be, but even it should not be supported, we need to remember it commits us to love at the center and to working to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. May it be so. May we do it. Blessed be. Amen. We're going to sing again, if you rise in body and spirit. Now, in the order of service, I said just verses 3 and 4, but I thought it didn't make sense to sing verses 3 and 4 without repeating 1. Because where is there going to be the stuff, the justice, the singing? So we'll start with verse 1 again.
Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound. Where I'm bound.
Thank you. Have a seat. Pretty much every week, we have the opportunity to share joys and sorrows, prayers and concerns. I'm going to carry this basket of stones to the back. You can go down the side aisles, get a stone if you wish, come forward, hold that stone, and send the energy of your joy, your sorrow, your prayers into that stone, and then place it in this bowl of water, which represents being held by this community of love. and a final stone for all that's in our hearts and on our minds. I have several sorrows and joys to share. Our member, Aaron Cooper, was planning to come back to Harrisburg and join us in church, but tragically, he died yesterday in Philadelphia hospital. Kate and Bart write particularly that he will be missed. Ed and Karen Sykes want to remember their neighbor, Sam Gambier, who died on August 4th. We remember Sam. Our member, Pat Kaufman, has recently been diagnosed with lung cancer and trying to figure out what the best treatment is. So, by all means, send Pat your support. And some joys. Joe Hefner writes that Betsy and Joe celebrated and are celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary, which was on August 11th. And Mary Brash tells us that the self-love service she presented here went so well that she's taking it on tour to several other Unitarian Universalist churches. And they're going to pay her. Will you join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation? I have a prayer from a former UUA president, William Singford. He wrote, "Spirit of life and love, dear God of all the nations, there is so much work to do. We have only begun to imagine justice and mercy. Hold us fast to our vision of what can be. May we see the hope in our history and find the courage and the voice to work for that constant rebirth of freedom and justice. That is our dream. Amen. Ashe. Blessed be." Will you join in singing Spirit of Life from your seats?
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Hello again. The Unitarian Church of Harrisburg is, as always, a freely gathered church of free people, but the lights and the staffing are not free. So, this church is created, sustained, and supported by all of you. Each month, we share half of our Sunday plate with a local nonprofit organization. For the month of August, we are sharing with Recycle Bicycle Harrisburg. Recycle Bicycle Harrisburg provides bicycles to those in need. Located in the Allison Hills section of Harrisburg, the organization primarily serves individuals and families with low income. If you wish to contribute online, visit uchbg.org homepage for options. Your financial support and commitment matter. Please consider giving what you are able.
Thank you, Brianna. That was lovely. And Chris, of course. And thank you for all your gifts to this congregation. Your monetary gifts, your gifts of being an RE teacher, your gifts of serving, all your gifts, time, talent, and treasure. Our closing hymn, words on the order of service, because the words in the hymnal aren't exactly right anymore. Answering the call of love, because we don't want to be offensive to those with mobility and standing issues.
Promise of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love abide, and so every soul is blessed and made whole. The truth in our hearts is our guide. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together and hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. Sometimes we build the barrier to keep love tightly bound, corrupted by fear, unwilling to hear, denying the beauty we found. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together and hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. A bright new day is dawning, when love will not divide. Reflections of grace in every embrace, fulfilling the vision divine. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. We are answering the call of love. Yes.
As Karen extinguishes our chalice, say, as we go forth, may we hold in our hearts that love is at the center. We honor our interdependence, value our pluralism. We will work for justice and equity as we grow spiritually and ethically. May we cultivate our spirits of gratitude and hope. We take our values out into the world. So blessed be and go in love.